Hello, everyone. I'm just gonna wait and let people trickle in, but as they trickle in, this is my first author interview on this channel, so I'm so
Oh, is it
excited.
really? Oh, that's cool.
Yes, I've done some on other channels before, so it's the first time on my channel. So it's like now I'm just gonna pin it and be like, everyone, come check out Kristina Forrest every time you come by.
That's cool. That's great.
So if you could introduce yourself to us, just a little information. We'll get into some fun questions in a minute.
Yeah, so I am Kristina Forrest. I am the author of YA romances and also romances for adults. I hate using that, but that's the differentiation. My most recent novel is Zyla Kai, and this is a story about a boy and a girl who fall in love one summer, then break up and run away together, or at least that's what everyone thinks. And that published two weeks ago on June 7th.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's so exciting. I did just finish it last night and I'm very excited to talk about it. So during the live show, we're going to start off with just fun get to know you questions as people kind of trickle in. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the writing process with you, just because I feel like a lot of people who will watch this are writers themselves, trying to get published or publishing themselves, and would love to
Mm.
kind of pick your brain and see how you have kind of finessed your process, because this is your third book and you're working on your fourth. So we're all very excited for you. And then at the end of the live show, we'll talk more about Zyla and Kai and their amazing adventure. But it definitely, we won't get spoilers for anyone. And then I think some people are in the chat. Hi, thanks for joining,
Hi.
everybody. Also, let me know in the chat if you guys have any questions you would like to ask too. But without further ado, I have some silly questions so we can get to know you a little better. Because I feel like
Okay.
that's the cool part about social media is you get to know each other a little better, even
Hmm.
even the fun stuff. So this is kind of like a quick one word answer, like fun question list. Okay, so
Got you. Hmm.
what's your favorite day of the week?
Thursday.
Thursday. Ooh,
Yeah.
why Thursday?
Because it's like the anticipation of the weekend.
Mm,
It's like Christmas Eve of the week.
I
That's the
see.
way I
I
look at
see.
it.
I love that. Okay, what's your favorite city that you've ever visited in the U.S.?
New York.
New York. Ooh.
Mm.
Okay, what's the last song you listened to?
It was one of the songs on Drake's new album. I can't remember which one though.
Ooh, I still have to listen to it. Ooh. What's your favorite holiday?
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve at your house sounds delightful. Okay, if you had to pick a superpower between invisibility and super strength, which would it be?
Invisibility.
Invisibility? I'd
Hmm.
have to go for super strength just so I could knock out anybody who talks bad about me, but that's
That's
okay.
also a good. I just want to be able to just like move through spaces and not be noticed sometimes. So that's like why I would pick invisibility and to like eavesdrop on conversations for book stuff.
I got this. I got this.
Yeah.
Okay, what's current fictional crush or celebrity crush?
Fictional, I can't really think of one. My celebrity crush for a long time was Michael B. Jordan, but he got a girlfriend, so not anymore. I don't have one right now.
That makes sense. That makes sense. For a really long time, mine was Tay Diggs. No rhyme,
Okay.
just cause.
I mean, he's really cute in Brown Sugar. I will say that. I think that's one of the times that he's the cutest. So.
Oh, for sure. That and like Best Men's Holiday. I think I watched those way too often as a child. I was just, where's my man? Okay. What is a favorite childhood TV show?
I was really into the Powerpuff Girls, as told by Ginger. Those are the ones that are coming to me right now. Hey Arnold. Hey Arnold was actually my favorite, and that's a show that I still watch sometimes.
Oh my God, I love that. I do a rewatch occasionally too when I just need some positive energy. I was told by Ginger, yep, I see.
Yeah.
A fun question that I think kind of parallels to your a book in a section is, what did you dress up as last Halloween?
I dressed up as Danny from the movie Midsummer. Um,
Really?
yeah, the scene where she's like the Mayflower Queen or the May Queen, and I had like a flower crown and like one of those like white peasant dresses.
Good. Did you just like hyperventilate and cry, or were you more present, like while she was drugged dancing?
I did take a picture when she's like crying. So that one, not the one when she's like, dancing until like her feet are sore.
Mm. Okay, and then do you have a favorite book that you always like go back and reread, or just a book that really like pinpointed, like, oh, I want to be an author?
That book for me was This Lullaby by Sarah Dessen.
Mm.
Um, the one that made like I read it and I was like, oh, I want to do this too. But a recent favorite is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I really love that book.
Ooh, I just got that book. I'm so
Oh,
excited
you
to read.
have to read it. It's so good.
Woo! I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped. Oh, okay. Well, that's our cute, fun little get to know you. I feel like I do know you very well now. So now I want to dive into some writing questions because I feel like this is your third book and you are working on your
Mhm.
fourth one. So I feel like you got a process hammered down, kind of, sort of. Like, I don't want to assume, but it feels like you're on it. That's the energy I'm getting from you.
Yeah.
um,
Oh,
have
sorry.
oh,
Go
that's
ahead.
okay.
Oh no,
Do you,
I thought that was your question. So I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but that is the question. If I have a
Mhm.
process now, um, it's more so like I'm always on deadline, so like I have to be conscious of when things are due. So I do have a process in that. Now I'm like, what is my process? I try to like just like write things that come to me, like little ideas, and then what I'll do is like I'll put the story on like a quick plot pyramid, with the opening, the inciting incident, the climax, then like the um, falling action point, and then the ending. And if I can get all of those points down, then I'm like, okay, I have a book. And then I'll go back and do a synopsis usually because my editor and or agent needs to see it. And then at that point, I know the story more fleshed out. And then I will do an outline. I'm a big outliner. And then I also do like character questionnaires where like I like have all these questions and I answer them in the voice of the characters. I'm like getting to know them. I do a lot of prep work ahead of time because I hate feeling like I'm wasting time when I'm like period general in life, but like especially when I'm working on a book, I think that the time is really precious. Um, and I like to use my writing time wisely. So yeah, I always outline and then I just come up with a schedule of like what I want to get done that week. And then I just stick to it until the book is done. That's
Amazing.
It's not glamorous, but that is like what my writing schedule is.
Well, I don't know. It sounds pretty glamorous to me, but I'm not a writer, so I'm always like amazed. So in like an average day, would you like how much do you normally tackle when it's either like writing your first draft or you're planning? So how many hours in a day do you normally write? Do you have like a system of how you write or get into the groove? Like, you got to make your coffee first and then get into.
um, so I work full time. Like I have a day job, and so I usually write in the evenings. And so I try to be in front of my. I
You
try to
still
be in front of.
have a job
I
after your
do,
third book?
yeah.
Is it because you like it?
I mean, yeah, I work in publishing. I like books, but I mean, like, when I got my job in publishing, I was living in New York at the time, and I knew that I would need to have more money than just book stuff. Um, and so what I do is I start writing at like 7-ish, and I'll write for like maybe 3 hours. I usually have a goal of like I want to get. I don't do word counts. I go by scenes. Like I want to write this scene today. Then like I try not to write on Sundays. I don't like to work on Sundays at all. But Saturday, like I'll write. It really depends, but for the most part, I go by scene. Like I can't always bang. I very rarely bang out an entire chapter unless it's short. But like I go by scenes, and then just kind of I always have to have water or some kind of beverage with me. It's usually water or maybe tea when it's colder. Um, but otherwise, yeah, I just need to know what I'm writing that day. That's the only thing I really need. I hate feeling like I'm going in blind, because then I just like kind of putter around and I feel like I'm wasting time. So yeah.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. And not to throw in like, oh my God, you have a day job? Like that I feel like a lot of people have a day job and everything. That's
I feel like,
totally
yeah,
normal.
most authors do. Well, most authors do. And you just kind of try to figure it out around that.
Yeah, but that's still amazing to balance that, just because when you've been cranking out books, I feel like almost every year for the past like 3 or so years, I'm shocked that you have the time to still hit those deadlines and then work a full-time job. That's incredible. Like really like kudos to you and every author that does that.
Thank you.
Especially like after having read this, and I feel like I really liked your first two books, but this book especially, I really like how it just took so much time to develop the romance. And I was like, I was sitting in my room like, oh my gosh. So to know that you like cranked out like scene after scene for like every single day and then did your day job after that, I'm like, that's amazing to me.
Oh, I'm glad that you liked it.
Yeah, I loved it. I'll praise you more later when we talk about the book. And I'm sorry if you don't get compliments, but I will do my best to not sprinkle. Oh, I thought a fun question about some writing advice would be, what is the
Mhm.
worst writing advice you've ever gotten?
I don't know, because if I felt like it was bad in the moment, it went one ear and out the other. I just did not listen to it at all. So I don't know about any bad. I can't recall any bad writing advice. Um, but best writing advice, I don't remember who told this to me, but it was just to read a lot. And I think that is the best writing advice that I got, because you want to make sure that you know what's being published in whatever genre or whatever that you want to publish in. But I feel like I get so much inspiration from the stuff that I read. So I feel like when I feel the most excited about writing is when I'm reading a really good book. And I think you learn things when you're reading, like how people go about doing certain, things in books. I think it's like, the best way to become a good writer is to be a big reader, I think.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. How many books do you normally read in a year with balancing writing and publishing multiple books and hitting deadlines and working?
Yeah, so let me see, because I keep track. I'm like really type A, and I like to keep track of how many books I read. Before I was publishing, I would read like maybe 50 books a year. But now I read, ooh, how many books have I read? Okay, so I have read 24 books so far this year, but that is because a like good chunk of them were the Ice Planet Barbarian books by Ruby Dixon. I
Oh
read
my
like so many of them over Easter weekend. It was insane.
God, wait, weekend too? That's a timely choice. I love that.
Yeah. So like usually though, I want to say I read maybe like around 35 books a year. It's not nearly as much as it used to be.
Well, that makes
Yeah.
sense. You're out here writing your own books, but that's so
Yeah.
cool. I love that you still take the time to read books that excite you. And that's really exciting. Do you read mostly a lot of romance then, or
Yes. Yes.
yeah?
Mostly romance, because I feel like, and if I read more thrillers, I feel like it would be the same way, because I feel like I need to know where the story is going. Otherwise, because my time is so limited and I also tend to have a limited attention span, I'm like, if this is taking too long, I kind of abandon it. That's the one rule I have. If I'm not enjoying something, I will stop reading it. But because I read a lot of romance, I'm always like, what's going to happen? So that's the only reason why I managed to read as many books as I do. I read romance.
That's smart. I always like, we call it like DNF. I don't know if you know, like did not finish. I always mark my books. I'm like, I didn't finish this. It got slow at this part. I'm so sorry. Not for me. So that makes sense. And then when it comes to like writing books, I know you said you have your plot pyramid, but is that like the first thing that comes to mind when you're like inspired about an idea? Is it the plot? Is it a character? Like what kind of is the first spark of, ooh, this could be a book?
It depends. Sometimes it's the plot, sometimes it's characters. For my first two books, it was the plot. And for Zyla Kai, it was characters. And for my fourth book, what was it? It was a mix of both, maybe? I can't even remember. But I prefer it when characters come to me first and then I can build a plot around them because for me at least, character informs plot. And so if I have a plot and I'm like trying to force characters into it without knowing who they are, what's motivating them, that's difficult. So it depends. It depends, but I prefer it if the characters come to me first because it's just easier.
That's good. Not having to force anything.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. And then I think Davina had a question about if you still find reading fun. Do you still find fun after writing books? You do? Mm-hmm.
I do. I like really like it when I have time to just read. You know, I do find it fun. I wish I could do it more.
Oh, well, hopefully you will in the future. I don't know, maybe after the fifth or sixth book, you'll be like, okay, time to figure out how to get more reading and relaxation in and not work 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
We'll see. And then during this kind of day and time with social media, how do you use social media as an author? Because I see you're pretty active on Instagram and things like that. Do you find it helps you? Does it hinder you? Like, I'm just very curious, how does it kind of aid the process of being an author?
Yeah, I feel like I've seen other people see something that's to the effect of like if it's not fun to you, don't do it. And I totally agree with that because I think that at the end of the day, what pushes sales is publisher support, it's advertising and it's marketing. And majority of the time, authors don't have any control over how much support you get in-house. And then there, of course, is the flip side of like organic excitement on apps like TikTok and stuff like that, which we also don't have any control over. And so I like Instagram. I've always liked Instagram. So that's why I use it. And it's like not hard for me to do because I'm used to using it. And I like it. And I think it's like fun to like, you know, see if I post something about one of my books and readers are like, oh, like I loved it, or like sometimes I'll get tagged in like those like aesthetic videos on like TikTok, which is really cute because I'm like, these are so nice. I need to learn how to make one of these videos. Twitter, I go on to see memes and like pop culture news. I'm very much just like an observer on Twitter. I don't tweet myself like very much. But it is a place where I still discover a lot of book recommendations. Like I follow a lot of particularly like YA and romance book bloggers on Twitter because I try to find recommendations all the time to add to my TBR that I feel like I can never really get to.
I think all of us can relate to that, just the never-ending TBR, but I love that. It's so true. I always get a lot of recommendations through Instagram and Twitter. I'm not into TikTok too much. I just feel like that's a time suck. I know you're also a type A person. I'm a type A person. I have it notify me if I've been spending 15 minutes on it, and I'm like, oh God.
I also have notifiers on my apps where like I can only be on it for a certain amount of time every day because otherwise I'm like, why? I just wasted so much time.
That's definitely social media nowadays. It really is doing its job at distracting us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then as you're writing, like what's your favorite part? As a person who preps, I would assume that, but is there any other part of the writing process that you really love that's your favorite part?
I do love the prep. I love when you get an idea and you're like crafting because it's like also hypothetical. Like this is how great it could be. Drafting is horrible. Well, it's not horrible. Some parts, like when I start to feel like I feel like one of the best feelings for me is when I finish a writing session and I feel really good about what I've done. But drafting also feels like pulling teeth and like throwing things against the wall and seeing what sticks and being like, this is a disaster, but I have to keep going. That's how I feel when I'm drafting and I don't like it. I really like the revision process because it's just like looking at something and realizing all the things that need to be fixed and then fixing them. And that's very satisfying to me. And it's just like it uses a different part of your brain that isn't so exhausting. Like I feel like when I'm drafting, I feel like a wrung out washcloth. Like I'm just like squeezing my brain for every bit of creative energy. Whereas like with revising, because it's already there, it's sort of like now I'm looking at things with a bird's eye view instead of like being in the midst of it. And I think that I'm a much better reviser than I am a drafter. So
That makes sense. That makes sense. I the type A personality is always very fun. I don't know also if you're a perfectionist. I love like I'm such a perfectionist that sometimes when tasks like I'm like I know I can't be perfect at it. It's so hard to do them and I have to like trick myself and be like, "Well, it's okay. We'll fix it later. You just have to get that first step in."
yeah, it took me a lot because I struggled with that a lot with first drafts, and it took me a long time to just accept that like this doesn't have to be perfect; it just has to be completed. And so
Mm.
then I like fixate on completing it, which is good because I need to, make my deadline. But it took me a while to get there, definitely.
Yeah, and I feel like completing it is an actual attainable goal, whereas doing everything perfectly, you could
Hmm.
do that for the rest of your life and never really achieve that because it's also subjective what's perfect and what's not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. And then you also work in publishing. So do you have
Mhm.
a favorite part of publishing and a least favorite part of publishing? Because I know on the internet, you hear a lot of bad things about publishing. So I'm interested to hear your take on what you love about it and something you don't love.
Mhm. What do I love about it? I mean, obviously, I love that. I love my editors. I love that I keep getting paid to write books. Like that's what I love about it. And I love the teams that I work with. I feel like, right now with my YA publisher and my adult romance publisher that I have people who are really supportive of what it is that I'm doing. And so that's great. I love that. What do I dislike about publishing?
Throw some tea in there.
Let me think. Let me think of a. It's something different every day.
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying to think of something that won't get me in trouble. um, Something obviously that I dislike is pay disparities between. I don't think that books by marginalized authors get as much money if they aren't about traumatic experiences. And they don't get as much support. It's like people don't know what to do with it. It's like instead of trying to market a book like, you know, this is the rom com of the summer, like it's the kids just happen to be black or the kids just happen to be Korean American. It's like people don't know what to do with it if it's like not doesn't have like police brutality or racism, and those stories are absolutely valid, but they're not the only experience of marginalized people. And I think people get really stuck on stuff like that, and there's a lot of biases that people do not address.
Mhm.
Publishing is still extremely white within publishing houses, and that affects authors because if the people working on your books, particularly in the sales force, are all white, and they have their own biases when they are pitching your books or not pitching your books that hinders you. So it really is like every level barriers to marginalized authors, and it sucks, you know. And that's why I said my favorite thing about it is that I feel like I have supportive teams, like, you know, the people that I work with directly in terms of like editorial and like design. I think that they always have really great covers. But I think, yeah,
No, that totally makes sense.
it needs to be better. It needs to be better. So
Yeah. I personally hope you would never get in trouble for saying that, because I think that's one thing that's, for so often we are told to not talk about the disparities and just kind of deal with them personally. So I'm glad, like, just even saying like, oh, this is an issue. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. It's like, no, we're working on this. It's only bad if I say we're like not working towards this. So hopefully, as you've formed your great team, other people can start forming great teams and we can start attacking those biases. So I'm a
yeah,
little bit more hopeful that we can start doing that as a society, as publishing houses, individually, team by team. It can be an individual effort, what you bring, but also it's like you have to demand those around you to follow suit. And that won't happen unless we all start speaking up. And it's shouldn't be frowned on to speak up about issues.
yeah,
We talk about other things, if you have health issues or anything like that. So it's like, hey, this is an issue. This is limiting people. Let's talk about
yeah.
it. Shouldn't be such a,
It
taboo
shouldn't be
discussion.
taboo. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, but that's good to know that and I'm also very happy you have a great team, and it's also very clear to me because of just I've seen your books are beautiful. They're behind me. I think they're gorgeous. The marketing team knows what they're doing. But also, yeah, that's great to hear, and I hope I'm very hopeful that authors like you continuing on and other authors beginning their journey start to develop those kind of relationships too, because that's what everyone
Yeah,
deserves. Mm.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. A fun kind of question to
Mhm.
backtrack. How do you celebrate when you finish a book?
I'm not good at that.
Oh
What do I do? I feel like I usually get something good to eat. Like I try to get like something sweet because I really like chocolate. So maybe, but I'm really not that good at it. I think my deep sense of satisfaction comes from accomplishing the task. So I'm just like so glad that it's done. Like for me, the way that I celebrate is like hitting send on a manuscript, and I'm like, it's done.
no.
But I definitely need to be better about celebrating things like that. I'm not really good at that.
Well, whatever celebrating is for you. I just know some authors like will post on like Instagram and Twitter of like this crazy thing they did, get
Oh,
or those things, and I was just like, oh, cool. Does every author do that? And I'm like, and I
I
feel like
definitely don't.
that's okay. We'll like talk to your team about. Well, you need to send Kristina a cake real quick, like come on. Something chocolate. Let's go.
Right, yeah. Somebody help me out.
Oh, and then someone asked about adult romance. So your fourth
Hmm.
book will be an adult romance. How
Yeah.
did that come about? Just one day you were like, let's do it, or did you always want to do that?
I always wanted to. I always wanted to, and for a long time, the timing was off because of my day job stuff and because of my YA schedule. But what happened with Zyla and Kai is that there was a year actually between Now That I Found You and Zyla and Kai. So Now That I Found You published in 2020, and Zyla Kai just published this year. And I finished that manuscript. The the whole process for Zyla and Kai was just so much easier. Like the edits weren't daunting. So I finished this book was done like 3 months ahead of schedule, really. And I
Ooh.
know, kind of. And so I had time and I had been thinking like I really and I also feel like it was like a product of 2020. Like it was such a nuts year that it was kind of like I just remember thinking to myself, I have this dream, this thing that I want to do, and like you miss all the shots that you don't take. Like I had this idea about these three sisters who were all named after flowers, Lily, Violet, and Iris, and their love lives and all the different things about, what was going on. And I really wanted to write those books. And so I just started, like, actually while I was revising Zyla Kai, if I had like an extra 30 minutes in my like writing session, I would just handwrite in my journal the neighbor fever. That's, at the time, it didn't have a title. I was just writing. And then by the time I handed in Zyla Kai, I was kind of like, okay, well, let me start typing up these pages that I was handwriting. And then I sent it to my best friend Allison, who's also my critique partner. We went to grad school together, and I was like, "Is this trash? Like, what do you think about this?" And I also cleaned it up a little and sent it to my agent, because I had told my agent about this idea years ago, but I never had time to do it. And so I finally sent it to her. And also, I was like, I can't tell if this is bad. Like, I trust you to tell me. And then they both wrote back to me and they were like, no, this is good. You should keep going. And so I was like, okay. And so then I wrote like about 25,000 words. I don't know how many pages that is. But then we prepared the proposal for it, because I was kind of like, I don't want to keep writing if I don't know if this is going to happen, because I was very much like, I also need to write my next YA, which I am contracted for. So if this is not going to happen, I don't really know if I want to write the whole book. Like a lot of authors who are already publishing, I think it's more common to like sell on proposal. So we went out on proposal with it, and it was fastest submission process I've ever had. Like 2 weeks later, an editor said she was taking it to acquisitions, and then that got the ball rolling really fast. And then it went to auction, and I ended up with Berkeley, who's doing so many wonderful romance novels right now. So yeah, that was like pretty painless, but like of the experiences I've had going on submission. So that's how that came about.
That's so cool. You know why it was so easy? Because the idea was so great. Everyone was like, let's go. Let's go. We need it. It does make me wonder, do you have like a backlog of book ideas that you're like waiting to like publish and write?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
could, I'm interested if you could put a number to it. How many do you think you have in your backlog?
So right now, well, like tomorrow, let's say, yeah, tomorrow I'm back on deadline, and I'm actually writing the follow-up to The Neighbor Favor, which is the book about Lily's second older sister. So I'm writing that next, and then after that, I'm writing my next YA. So that's two. Then the other book about Lily's third sister, and then let me see. Off the top of my head, I have like 4 other ideas that I know that I want to write, or maybe like 5. I just kind of keep them in my arsenal and let them marinate, and then when the time comes, I'm like, okay, let's try that. Let's see what happens with that one.
Email it to your friends. Is this trash? Can you let me know?
Yeah, that's basically what I say. I'm like, what do you think about this idea? And if someone says like, I think you should try it, then I'll be like, okay. I like to have a second opinion.
Well, that's good. That's good. But also, I don't know. I love your book so much, so I'm also would be like, I'll take that. I'll be on that email list. I'll tell you how it is. I think. I guess let's move into talking about Zyla Kai now, because
Okay.
I don't want to get into spoilers. I won't do it out of respect for the people who haven't read it. But I have a lot of questions about it.
Okay.
First of all, I do have to say 5-star, definitely the summer book. I feel like everyone needs to read this.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
Yeah, it was like when I was reading it, and I feel like this is your like strength as an author, is like you write such like visually appealing stories. Like I can see the characters, I can see their behaviors. All the actions are just like, I'm like, where's the movie? I need it. Like I need this on the screen. Yeah, fingers crossed. This was definitely giving those just summer vibes, and I was like, oh, I love that. But a fun element that you kind of implemented was playing with time, in the sense that we
Mm.
know that this is a couple that has disappeared from the beginning. We know, like, okay, and they have history. They dated, they broke up, and then you roll into, okay, let's talk about what happened, and you play with different perspectives and playing with that time element. Did you know that going into this book that you wanted to do that?
Yes. I
Mm.
knew that I wanted it to be a story about perspective and perception. Like, this
Mm.
is the truth. The truth is between Zyla and Kai. They know the truth. The speculation is from everyone else. And I knew that in order to dig up the truth, you have to start from the beginning. And so
Mm.
it was going to be like, this is where they started in juxtaposition to what everyone else thinks.
Yeah.
So I always knew that I was going to play with time, and that actually made it more exciting for me because while I was writing, I felt like I knew something that the reader didn't. Like, there's this big question, where are they? But like, I always knew, so like it was like fun
You're like,
when I
ah.
was writing. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
I
I
I
love.
knew from the beginning.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, and it gives that energy of you're kind of waiting for the reveal, but you're just like also trying to figure out what are all these moments everyone's talking about. Like, for the people who haven't read this, there's a bit of a rumor mill around Kai and Zyla, because Kai's kind of like the big, what is it, big boy on campus, big man on
Yeah,
campus.
big man on campus.
Yeah. He's the cool kid. So the rumor mill was spinning this whole time, and I really love that, because I definitely can feel like people can relate to that, where there's rumors and like you don't really know what's happening, or the things you hear about other couples and what they're going through. It's like, okay, but is that real, or is that just a
Mhm.
rumor or an exaggeration? So I did love that element, and it made me like question and wonder, like, oh, what actually is happening and how do they actually feel about it? So it was a really fun element, and I feel like when YA normally does play with the time element, it's kind of like that back and forth where someone starts at the beginning, someone starts at the end, and we kind of piece it together, if that makes sense. So I love
Mhm.
that your take. I haven't seen anyone do this and do it so well. At least for me. I'm like, I feel
Me
like I'm the
too.
average, but I feel like I should know. But I really, really love that element, because I love a good surprise. I love a good secret. I love when someone there's just a little treat at the end of the tunnel, and I just have to figure it out, or like guess along the way. So it was very exciting to read. Suspense in the way that
I'm
I like.
glad. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
so I
glad
feel
to
like
hear
you
that.
thrillers, but YA, where I'm like, they disappeared and I don't know why. Okay, stressed. And then I also really love the attention to detail about mental health for Kai, and
Mhm.
talking about therapy so openly, especially for a male Black character to
Yeah.
going to therapy and be so honest about it. How did you come about that? Did you know you wanted him to go to therapy? Did you know like his history, and what research did you do? I'm just very curious.
Yeah, I did not. I He always was going to have a bit of a tragic backstory. Like, I always knew his parents were going to no longer be living by the time the story starts. Um, and I knew that he was somebody who was actually a deeply sad person. Like, he's like, yeah, I think Kai just has this like beautiful sort of like personality where like he is sad, but he is ultimately a hopeful person. Um, but I did not plan for him to be someone who was in therapy actually. So the beginning of this book, I actually, which was outside of my usual writing process, I kind of just like was free writing a little bit. I knew what it was going to be, and I knew that I was just trying to get to the inciting incident. And sometimes I try to like just get there without planning it too closely. And I was just working, the first chapter is from Kai's perspective, and then he just like mentioned the therapist when I was writing his chapter, and then I was like, I think he needs that. And I just kept going. And it was important for me to have a scenes where you saw him talking to his therapist, because I didn't want it to be like this like abstract thing, like, oh, he's in therapy, but like you don't see it and you don't see how it helped him. And in terms of research, I mean, it was just like based on my own life, like I had started therapy at the same time that I started working on this book. And so a lot of the conversations and feelings and things that, his biggest struggle is with anxiety, and that's like based on his his desire to be perfect and to do things perfectly, the pressure that he puts on himself, and like the guilt he feels when he feels like he has not accomplished a goal. That's just like all my own stuff that I just like gave to him when I was writing. Um, and so a lot of the conversations between him and his therapist are just like really based on things that I had talked about in therapy. And when I would be writing those chapters, when I'm in a groove, I'm a pretty fast drafter, but those writing those scenes was slow because I was just trying to make sure that the dialogue felt realistic. And there were times when I'd be like in therapy with my therapist, and I'd be like, in my book, this happens. He says, like, what do you think his therapist should say when he says this? And like, I did ask her, she was like my sensitivity reader. I did ask her questions sometimes, like, because Kai's struggles with depression aren't like that. That's not something that I experienced. And so I did ask her questions about like his grief and how he deals with his grief, like what she thought, um, how she thought it should be handled, or what she would say to someone who experience has Kai's particular experience with grief. And to me, that didn't feel like research because I was just like talking to my therapist. I actually really, really hate doing any kind of research. So yeah, I didn't do any. It was just like all really like based on my own stuff for the most part.
Okay, that's really impressive then, because I definitely read very honest, as a person who also has been in therapy for a few years. I think there was like a scene that really stuck out to me where the therapist told Kai to not be perfect and to just do his best. And that
Mm.
perfection, it kind of like how I said earlier, and I think you were talking about it too, that perfection is like this unattainable thing that you can
Yeah.
never measure, like, oh, I've done it, check off. It's like just a constant thing. And I forget exactly what his therapist had said, but I loved seeing that in a YA romance novel. I just think that's so amazing because it didn't take away from the story, because I feel like a lot of times when you have mental health issues, it ends up being the whole plot of the book, that this
Yeah.
person is broken or needing help or things like that. So it's just really cool that you still have this really fun, hopeful, romantic story that also is like, oh, hey, I have a traumatic past, but I'm handling it. I'm doing
Yeah.
the work. Some days are hard, but like other days I'm like really excited and like doing my best, which is just crazy. I'm That's crazy that you didn't do any research and that just came to you. Wow.
No, it's just me and my problems.
That's okay, because we all clearly have our own
Yeah.
problems. So, I mean, like, you got to check for it. So good job. Good work. Um, and then I did want to ask, because I feel like since I've read a couple of your novels now, which character, is there a character either in Zyla Kai or in the other novels, that you feel most related to, or do you kind of put yourself in each character now that I just heard you talk about Kai?
um I feel I love all of my characters. But oddly, I feel the closest to Evie, even though she's like a famous actress. We have nothing in common on paper. Like if you were to line us up on paper, we're so different. But like, I I can't even explain it except to say that when I was writing this book, and when I was writing Now That I Found You, which was in 2019, that was a really hard year for me, and I felt really unhinged. Just like my life was crazy, busy, and I didn't know up from down, and I just was just like all over the place. And I happened to be writing a book about a girl who also felt all of those things. And so with Evie, I don't know. It's like a chicken or the egg situation. Is she like that because I was like that at the time, or was I like that because I was in the head of the character who was like that? I don't know, but like because of that writing experience, I feel very tied to her in a way that I feel tied to all of my characters, but I feel like a really close bond with Evie just because I was writing her when I was going through like a difficult time.
Mm.
Um, and also, I feel like she's the character who like gets the most shit from people. Like people are
Really?
like, oh yeah, like sometimes people will like tag me in a review that's like, I love this so much, and like Evie was like too hard on Milo, or she's like basically she's kind of a pill or whatever. And I'm, people, that's fine. People have their opinion about her. Like reading is subjective. But because of that, I feel more protective of her than other characters.
That makes
Um, yeah, but I also, I mean, I love all of my girls. I love Chloe and I love Zyla too. And of course, I feel very, very close to Kai. I feel also very protective of him too.
mm.
I love Milo. I love Eli. I love all the kids.
Yes. I also love the fact that they all kind of live in the same universe. I was like
Yes.
reading, I forget when it happened, like in the first like 50 pages when he kind of tries to ask out Zyla and stuff. And he's like, oh, you want to watch this movie with Evie? And I put the book down. I was like, did he just mention Evie?
Yeah, I had wanted to like put more Easter eggs in the book, but I couldn't think of a way to do that organically because like Evie and Milo are famous. They're not going to see them unless it's like at a concert. And Chloe's in New York and Eli's in California. Like I just couldn't think of an organic way to work it in other than to say like, hey, she's in this movie.
Yes. I
Yeah,
loved it. I freaked out because I love that you're putting that into this story because it does kind of show the love for the characters. And it just kind of shows this kind of like universe that everybody lives in, the Christina Forrest universe, which I'm just
yeah,
like, and there will be more. So I'm so excited. That's so cool. And I am an actress, that's like kind of like I would say my job, even though like doesn't technically pay the bills yet. I'm like you, I got my job and then my day job.
yeah.
um,
That's so
but
cool.
yeah, I definitely connected to Evie. So that's really cool to hear that she's your favorite character. Cause I will say I like the first 70 pages of Now That I Found You as an actor, I was like, she got a big role and she's complaining. Da, da, da. Yeah, I love the development of her. And I think that's again, you're just crafting this story that's deeper than like the individual. It's about this whole experience that even the title Now That I Found You means so much more than love or like what you would just
Hmm.
think of a romantic relationship. It's all about like, oh, who am I as a person and what am I chasing
Yeah.
want? And I love that so much. And I think that yeah, that again shows the kind of power that you have in your writing, that you're just portraying
Thank
all these
you.
stories. Yes. Yes, I love them. And I think, yeah, this is the summertime read for 2022. I almost forgot what year it was. I'm like, oh my God, some year. I love it. It's great. I think you did a phenomenal job. And then let me see if I had any
Thank
other
you so
questions.
much.
Yes. And I truly mean that. When people ask me for YA recommendations, I'm like Christina Forrest or Maureen Gu. Those are my two.
I love Maureen. She's one of my friends, and I like always recommending her because she's just so funny. And like when I was starting out, we were at the same publisher, and they sent us on tour together. And she was so like a mentor for me, and was like just telling me so many important things, and was like so helpful. And she has been such a good friend to me. So
That's
I'm so glad to hear that because I love her books too.
That's great. No, like literally, I feel like this and then somewhere only we know, or is that the one
Yeah.
she
Hmm.
it's so fun. And I think that's like I
Hmm.
feel like YA romance can be like, let's focus on the trauma and this boy that
Yeah.
needs healing and this girl that fixes him. And I feel like that's very classic YA romance. And I feel like
Hmm.
you two are just so just fun. You're just like you're gonna have a good time with every single page, laughing out loud,
Yeah.
or being shocked by someone saying something funny. And it's always a good time. So I'm glad that she was awesome and very helpful to you. And I don't know, I feel like you two are very like in the same boat as like just great YA romance that I highly recommend.
Oh.
And then was there anything else that I wanted to ask? Oh, I think an interesting question is if you could meet the characters Zyla and Kai, would you have anything to tell them? Like, is there anything left that you have to say to them? Because their journey
Oh,
was a journey.
I know. What would I say? I think I would tell them um to I feel like they both have pretty good heads on their shoulders. I think out of all of my characters, I worry about them the least. I would worry about them the least, like in the real world. I think that they are pretty solid by the end of the book. I guess I would say don't lose sight of yourselves or each other. I just, in my mind, all of my characters end up together. Like that's just what happens. Um, I don't know if I'd have anything to say. I'd probably just give them a hug and say good luck, you know, send them on their way.
That's so sweet. I almost feel like that's also the message that like us readers kind of get in a sense, where it's just like, okay, like I'm trusting you. You have your dreams, your ambitions, and you're focused on yourself. Good luck. Have a
Yeah.
good time. So that's really sweet, and I get that energy, especially compared, not that I'm comparing all your books, but like compared to other characters. That makes sense.
Mhm.
That Zyla and Kai definitely are, I think, fortunate enough to kind of really know what they want and are chasing that, which is really cool to see too. That they're not completely lost and stranded. They're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And those were all the questions I had for you. I know we're coming up to an hour. If anyone else who's watching has any questions that they like to ask, please put them in the chat. I know someone asked earlier, what writing software do you use? I'm also
I
curious.
use Microsoft Word. I am an old school
Traditionalist.
girl. Yeah, I've thought about Scrivener and I actually wanted to download it, but I've already started my thoughts. So I'm just like maybe next book. But I Microsoft Word and like a poster board with sticky notes does it for me. So
That makes sense. Sticky notes. Do you use that for the plot pyramid, or is that just?
no, when I put like I basically storyboard, like I'll have a poster board and then I'll go chapter by chapter with sticky notes to tell me what happens. And that's how I keep track of threads and
Mhm.
subplots, like to make sure I'm not dropping something. Because I'm such a visual thinker, I think like you said something about like feeling like the story is like like you can picture it.
Yeah.
And I think that's largely because I'm a visual thinker and I like get really into detail. I have to when I'm drafting, actually I do have my big poster board in front of me to remember like what it is that I need to include in the chapter because otherwise I will forget.
Okay. Well, that does make sense then, that you're a visual person. That totally translates through your books as well. And then I guess you already kind of mentioned your adult books that are coming. And you kind of mentioned it earlier, the names and things. Is there anything that you could tell us about your future projects?
Yes. So The Neighbor Favor, which is my adult romance debut, that publishes on February 28th of next year. And the cover
Congratulations.
reveal
You were so close. You were so.
it was February 7th, but then it got pushed.
Mhm.
So that is February 28th, and the cover reveal for that is this Monday, which is exciting. I've had the cover and I've seen it months ago, but like we wanted to wait until Zyla Kai came out and everything to share it. And that is a story about a woman named Lily who works in publishing. She really wants to be a children's book editor. Like she wants to work on books, sort of like the Rick Riordan imprint, kind of like diverse fantasy. Like that's her big dream. She's a huge high fantasy reader, but she actually is stuck working at a really like depressing nonfiction imprint. And she's not paid very well. And she ends up corresponding online with this author who wrote one of her favorite fantasy novels, and he uses a pen name. Like, she doesn't really know what he looks like, and they correspond for a long time, and they like kind of fall for each other a little bit. And then when they're supposed to meet up in person, he just like ghosts her. And then a few months later, she gets this neighbor who she like, feels like she has good chemistry with. But it actually is the author that she was emailing with, and she doesn't know. And he finds out who she is too. Like, neither one of them knew. So it's like mistaken identity, and what's the other trope? Oh, epistolary, because like a lot of it is like, them exchanging emails. And so yeah, it's a fun story.
That's so great. I just realized I didn't change the banner. Just ignore me. That's so exciting. I was thinking like You've Got Mail with a hint of like.
Everyone says that, and I have never seen You've Got Mail.
No.
That's the one Meg Ryan movie I have not seen. I've seen the rest of them, but I have not seen You've Got Mail. But I can see why people would draw that in comparison.
Yeah, just because they're literally writing emails to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it for the first time last year, and I was just like, this is overhyped. But I'm also like, it's not for my generation. You wouldn't catch me writing emails to nobody. But I get the idea. I get the premise. I see why it was cute in its day. Even though the ending, I feel like you should watch it soon because I want to hear your opinions on the ending, because I was upset by the ending and everyone else was like, that's life, that happens. Because I don't want to spoil it. You watch it.
Okay. Now I'm like worried.
It's interesting. You never hear people talking about that aspect, but I do think it's because it's probably it came out in the 90s. So I feel like
I actually don't know.
Yeah. So I feel like the judgment of people watching it was during a different time, where now I'm like, as a woman who owns a business, I feel a certain way.
Oh wait, I've seen like the last 5 minutes where they meet up in the park, but doesn't his business makes her business go out of business? Like he's like a big retail chain bookstore, and makes her little store go out of business. Right. Okay, gotcha.
Start their relationship afterwards, all jolly, and I'm like,
okay.
Never me, not I. I would need some months to calm down.
Yeah, okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch it, because every time I talk about the premise of the book, people are like, "Oh, it's like You've Got Mail," and I'm like, I guess, yeah.
See, it's only purely because they're so focused on the email writing. That's why probably we're all like, "You got mail?"
Yeah, and like, it's not a bad comp. That's like a super popular movie, so.
Oh yeah, and I feel like that's like also a compliment almost, because so many people love that movie. Like my parents love that movie; they're obsessed. And I'm like, Oh, Davina wants to know what level of heat is the adult romance, which I think is a good question.
Yeah.
Open door romance. What are we looking at?
It's not closed door. I would say. I mean, what's so interesting is like, I feel like the spice has like the meaning of it has changed since like reading romance novels has gotten like more mainstream popular. Because for me, levels of spice were like different than what people are saying now. I would say like on a level of like 1 being closed door and 5 being like Tessa Bailey, it's like a 2.5. Like, it's in the middle. It's not closed door, but it's not super explicit either. I don't know. It happens.
Buy it and find out for itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. And I agree. Yeah. Spice has really changed, especially like I feel like with TikTok and like TikTok, especially with like YA, they'll talk about spice in a certain way. And I'm like,
that's weird to me when that happens. But I think that, well, when I say that's what I mean, because like they'll be like, oh, this book was spicy. And to me, I'm like, there was like 1 sex scene. So like, I think that what I consider spice is like different from like what the conversation is now. But yeah.
That makes sense. Oh, and then for everyone, if you didn't see or hear, we're talking about her. Is it going to be your next release?
That is my next release. Yeah, okay. So that will come out before my next YA. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so excited for you. And I don't have any more questions. I don't see any more questions in the chat. So I just like to thank you for spending your time. Everyone, please go check out Zyla Kai. Great summer romance read that tackles a lot of great things. And it's just such a fun, lighthearted read too. Well, lighthearted in a sense of like I laughed out loud a lot. I was like cheesing every other page. I'm like, I might cheese and smile really easy. That's just my personality too. um,
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm so glad that you enjoyed the book. That's, I'm so happy to hear that. So,
yes, you forever have a fangirl over here in this corner of the internet.
thank you.
So I will be rooting for every release. I'm very excited to see you dive into adult romance. We'll see if any of these get picked up as movies. I'll be manifesting that for you. I'll be manifesting that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think that ends our live show. So everyone go check out Kristina Forrest on Instagram, Twitter, and her newest release. And yeah, I hope everyone else enjoys the rest of their day. And thank you so much for joining and being in the chat. Love you all. I will see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.